Forget the Hollywood version. Gladiators weren't all muscle-bound men in shiny armor shouting, "Are you not entertained?" across the Colosseum. They weren't all slaves doomed to die for sport either. The truth is more profound, darker, and far more human. The real gladiators of ancient Rome were a mix of warriors, rebels, celebrities, and volunteers. Yes, volunteers, who fought for survival, fame, or a chance at redemption. Some were trained killers. Others were thrown into the arena with barely a weapon and told to make a show of it. Behind every swing of a sword was a personal story of fear, bravery, cruelty, and hope. Today, we dig beneath the sand and blood to reveal the truth. Who were these men, and occasionally women, who became the blood-stained icons of Roman entertainment? What myths survived about them? And why, centuries later, do we still care? Let's meet the real gladiators. Gladiator 101. What they were and weren't. When you hear the word gladiator, what comes to mind? Maybe it's Russell Crowe, sword raised high. Or perhaps it's the roaring Colosseum, thousands chanting for blood. But let's rewind and build this from the ground up. The truth about who gladiators really were might just change your whole view. First, let's clear this up. Not all gladiators were slaves. Sure, many were, captives of war, criminals, or debtors sold into combat. But others chose this life. These auctorati, or volunteer gladiators, signed up willingly. Why? For fame, food, medical care, or maybe just a roof over their heads in hard times. Ancient historian Suetonius even tells us that Emperor Caligula, twisted soul that he was, forced noblemen to become gladiators. But some nobles volunteered before they could be shamed into it. Imagine today's wealthy elite willingly stepping into a UFC octagon for life. Another myth. Every gladiator died in the arena. Nope. According to ancient records compiled by Marcus Junkelman and corroborated by research published in the Journal of Roman Archaeology, the average death rate for gladiatorial matches was only about 10%. That means most gladiators survived their fights. Why? Because training a gladiator was expensive. Think months of food, care, and schooling in special ludi gladiatorii, gladiator schools. Killing off that investment after one show would be like tossing your Ferrari off a cliff after a single joyride. Plus, the crowd wanted drama, not mindless slaughter. A good fight that ended with both warriors alive meant more future profits and repeat customers. The image of gladiators as dumb muscle misses something important. They were highly trained combat artists. A gladiator school was part boot camp, part performance academy. Trainees were drilled relentlessly. Footwork, weapon mastery, stamina. They learned how to sell a hit, when to fake a stumble, and how to stay alive while still thrilling the crowd. And forget the idea that they all fought the same. There were over 20 known types of gladiators, each with unique armor, weapons, and styles. The retiarius, for example, fought with a net and trident, ducking and weaving like a dancer. The secutor, his classic opponent, was heavily armored and fought like a tank. These matchups weren't random. They were designed for spectacle. The choreography was often compared to ballet, but one where someone might lose an arm. And believe it or not, some gladiators were women. Roman writers like Juvenal and Cassius Dio grumbled about women fighting in the arena, calling it scandalous, but it happened. In fact, a 200 CE inscription discovered in Halicarnassus refers to two female gladiators, Achillea and Amazon, who were released with honor, indicating they earned their freedom through skill in the arena. There's even evidence of child gladiators, known as Priori gladiari, usually orphans or slaves, trained from a young age. Morally repugnant by modern standards? Absolutely. But it was Rome, and in Rome, bread and circuses trumped morality most days. Far from anonymous cannon fodder, some gladiators were superstars. Graffiti found in Pompeii celebrates a fighter named Chelidus the Thracian, declaring him the heartthrob of the girls. Fans wrote his name on walls. Some adorned their homes with oil lamps shaped like gladiator helmets, primitive merch. Fighters had stage names like Flama or Spiculus. And Rome's citizens followed their careers like modern fans follow footballers. Spiculus, in particular, was a favorite of Emperor Nero, who showered him with wealth. So enamored was Nero that when his reign crumbled, he reportedly wished Spiculus would kill him instead of taking his own life. Yes, the job was deadly, but it also offered a chance for fame, fortune, and freedom. Inside the ludus, training, brotherhood, and the harsh reality of gladiator life. The training grounds of Rome's gladiators were not unlike modern professional sports academies, if those academies also doubled as prisons. Known as ludi, these schools were scattered across the empire, with the most famous one in Rome itself, the Ludus Magnus, sitting in the shadow of the Colosseum. From the outside, they looked like standard military barracks. On the inside, they were controlled environments of discipline, isolation, and fierce preparation. For many gladiators, life in the ludus began in chains. Whether captured in battle, sold by desperate families, or sentenced for crimes, they were brought in as the property of a lanista, the trainer and owner of the gladiators. The lanista was part coach, part businessman, and part jailer. He had complete control over their lives, and sometimes over their deaths. New recruits were called novici. They underwent a brutal assessment period during which they were evaluated not just on strength or endurance, but on their ability to learn quickly, to withstand pain, and to obey. Those who made it through this initiation were assigned a specific fighting style based on their build and temperament. Were you fast and wiry? You might become a retiarius, using a net and trident to dance around your opponent. Stocky and durable? You'd be better suited as a secutor, built to absorb damage and overpower foes. Some fighters specialized in exotic weapons, designed more for show than practicality. These roles were crafted for contrast, light against heavy, agility against brute force, because variety made better theater. Daily life in gladiator school was a rigid routine. At dawn, the fighters trained with wooden swords, heavier than real ones, to build muscle memory and stamina. They sparred under the eyes of instructors, many of whom were retired gladiators themselves, men who had survived long enough to pass on their hard-won wisdom. Every slash, every step was rehearsed to perfection. Gladiators weren't trained to brawl. They were trained to perform controlled violence, choreographed enough to wow the crowd, real enough to maim or kill. This balance between entertainment and death required precision and nerve. Meals were practical and high in carbohydrates, which helped build bulk and body fat, a form of natural armor that could protect internal organs from shallow wounds. According to recent forensic analysis of bones found at a gladiator graveyard in Ephesus, Turkey, gladiators consumed a diet rich in barley, beans, and legumes. The study, published in PLOS ONE in 2014 by researchers Fabian Kahns and Karl Grossschmidt, confirmed they had high levels of strontium, a mineral found in plant-based foods, suggesting their diet was surprisingly vegetarian. Gladiators were even nicknamed hordeari, barley men. Despite their intense training, their living conditions were harsh. They were kept in cells at night, not unlike prisoners. Some were shackled, others were under constant surveillance. And while they could become celebrities in the arena, within the walls of the ludus, they were commodities. A sick or injured gladiator meant lost revenue, so while their medical care was among the best available at the time, gladiator schools employed physicians who became specialists in trauma treatment. It wasn't necessarily compassionate. It was strategic. You don't let your prize fighter bleed out if there's a crowd waiting next week. Yet even in this grim routine, there were moments of fraternity. Gladiators trained together, bled together, and often died together. Bonds were forged between men who, in any other world, might never have spoken. Inscriptions and grave markers sometimes reveal these connections. One gravestone from Pompeii honors two fighters, Carpus and Chalor, who requested to be buried side by side. Whether they were brothers in blood or brothers in arms, we don't know, but the affection was real. In an environment where everything was about survival, camaraderie becomes its own kind of rebellion. Some gladiators even married or had children, though their families lived outside the school. A few became wealthy enough to buy their freedom, or to be granted it after a winning streak. Freedom was symbolized by a wooden sword called a ludus. Receiving it was the dream of every gladiator who wanted out of the sand and back into the world, but curiously, not all accepted it. Some gladiators, having known only the ludus life and addicted to the adrenaline of the arena, chose to keep fighting. Whether driven by fame, money, or purpose, they preferred danger over the unknown quiet of a civilian life. In a strange twist, society both reviled and revered them. Gladiators were considered infames, a legal class lower than prostitutes and actors. They couldn't vote or hold public office, yet the same people who looked down on them also idolized them. Children imitated them in games. Merchants sold figurines in their likeness. Even members of the elite attended their bouts, placed bets on them, and sometimes fell in love with them. One ancient wall scribble reads, "Cratians, the net fighter of the night watch, makes all the girls sigh." Gladiators were outsiders, yes, but adored ones. All of this created a strange psychological tension. You were both a prisoner and a performer, a weapon and a man, disposable and unforgettable. The arena wasn't just a space for combat, it was a crucible for identity. And many gladiators, despite the circumstances, found in that life a strange sense of purpose. They were feared, they were famous, they mattered. Now that we've seen inside the walls of the gladiator schools, their rituals, routines, and realities, let's explore some of the most iconic individual gladiators from history. These weren't legends made up by screenwriters. These were real men who fought not just for Rome, but for survival, and sometimes for something like glory. Icons, outsiders, and the truth behind the sand. Some gladiators didn't just survive the arena, they rewrote its rules. Among the most famous was Flamma, a Syrian-born fighter whose real name has been lost to time. Flamma earned the ludus, his wooden sword of freedom, not once, but 4 times. Each time he chose to return to the sand. Why? Historians speculate that perhaps it was the glory, the admiration, or the sense of belonging. Flamma died at age 30 after 34 matches, 21 of which he won. That's an astounding record in a world where every fight could be your last. Then there was Spiculus, a favorite of Emperor Nero. So loved was Spiculus that Nero gifted him palaces and riches. When Nero's reign collapsed, he reportedly wished Spiculus would kill him, believing it would be an honorable death. Spiculus's fame echoed far beyond the arena. He was a symbol of what gladiators could become in the eye of power, not just survivors, but icons. And not all icons wore helmets. Female gladiators, gladiatresses, were rare but real. Records tell us of women like Achillea and Amazon, who fought and earned their freedom. Their presence in the arena scandalized some Roman elites, but it also drew massive crowds. They proved that spectacle knew no gender, and neither did bravery. Even emperors got in on the action, at least theatrically. Commodus, son of Marcus Aurelius, fancied himself a gladiator and fought in staged bouts. Though he fought with dulled weapons and often against disabled or weak opponents, his obsession with the arena showed how deeply embedded gladiators were in Roman identity. These were not fringe figures. They were stitched into the fabric of Roman life, blood, fame, and all. Through the centuries, the myths hardened, that all gladiators were slaves, that all fights ended in death, that they were little more than brute entertainment. But the truth is richer, more painful, and far more human. So what are we really left with when we peel back the myth and sand from the arena floor? Gladiators were not just blood sport players. They were men and women caught in the machinery of empire, fighting for survival, honor, or just a second chance. Some were coerced into battle. Others chose it. They trained like athletes, endured like soldiers, and performed like actors. They lived short, intense lives in a society that both glorified and degraded them. The Colosseum may be in ruin now, but the stories of those who fought there still resonate. In their scars, we find strength. In their choices, however constrained, we find resilience. And in their humanity, we see ourselves. Because in the end, the gladiator wasn't just a fighter. He was a symbol of the brutal beauty of ancient Rome. Flawed, spectacular, and unforgettable. And maybe, just maybe, that's why we're still watching. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history? Impress your friends and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the gladiators and their place in Roman times, check out our book, The Roman Games, a captivating guide to the gladiators, chariot races, and games in ancient Rome. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.